Everything is about to change for the Toronto Maple Leafs as they, of course, have hired Craig Berube, and Brad Treliving has recently spoken out revealing how this hiring could change everything for the Leafs. And there was also an article done by a hockey psychologist going into how Craig Berube could really unlock the Maple Leafs this season. So I'm going to break that down and much more in this episode. But before we do, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that button. About 70% of you who are watching aren't subscribed, so make sure to click that subscribe button. And Darius is visiting us still from his vacation. He'll be there for another week or so. But Darius, let's get right into it. Craig Berube now. We're inching closer and closer to the Toronto Maple Leafs, the start of the season. Everybody is super excited. Haven't been this excited for a season in a while, even though I feel like I say that every single summer heading into the hockey season. But you can see this here. Let's just dive right into Craig Berube and what his impact could be. So there's a bunch of different things going on. There was a sports psychologist who dived into Craig Berube, which we'll get into. We're also going to start right here with some comments by Brad Treliving about what the impact could be. So you can see this here. He said, "We have to find a way to do the hard, unsexy things longer." Leafs manager Brad Treliving said when Keefe was fired. Those things don't require skill. There are some things in our sport, especially at this time of year, that are not related to skill but help you win. That is not to say you get rid of skill. You need skill and talent to win, but to me, we need a voice that can bring that out. Throwing a little bit of shade to Sheldon Keefe, nothing too crazy, but this was basically his reasoning for firing Sheldon Keefe, was that they needed a new voice. They needed someone who's a bit harder and who could really push these players to do the things that they weren't doing under Sheldon Keefe, quite frankly. So what are your thoughts on these comments? And it kind of lends into the sports psychologist mind point of view of that, but we'll get into that in a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've talked about it before. I like how Brad Living says things that I can see with my eyes, right, on the ice, where they need to do things that, are the unsexy things, like he was talking about, right? I feel like the team plays with too much finesse sometimes, and I feel like something that's about to change with Craig Berube, I hope, is Sheldon Keefe kept putting out the top lines no matter what in every situation, even if some of them weren't going that night. And I feel like Craig Berube is going to move away from that and only play the players who are going that night to give the team the best chance to win. So hopefully some of the politics in terms of money will go away with Craig Berube, because we saw with the St. Louis Blues, there was guys that were making more money, but if they weren't going that night, they're not going to play as much, right? So I'm hoping that changes in that way. And again, I like the comments. I like that Brad Living was like, "Hey, we need a new voice here. We need a guy who's been there and has been proven to win." So I like everything that Brad Living has said so far this summer, because honestly, I see it with my eyes, right? It's all making sense to me. I feel like the last couple of years with management, we've kind of been gaslit, right? "Oh, don't worry, or we're going to get things that are good for the team and try and improve the team," but it didn't really make sense, right? So I'm liking so far what Brad Living's been doing so far this summer.
I also like the moves he's made following Craig Berube, which of course we spoke about ad nauseum here. But you can also hear it's all team first with Craig Berube. That's what he cares about. He does not care about individuals. He does not care about points. It's team first all the way. And if that hurts some's feelings along the way, or some people's feelings along the way, sorry, so be it. And yeah, and that's what we love to hear. Not saying that Sheldon Keefe would say the same thing in theory, but we saw it multiple times. We saw after he got fired that he was scared to call out Mitch Marner, even though for his lack of hustle at times and all these things. That's not going to happen with Craig Berube, and this is a good thing. This is a very good thing. And there was an article done up, whatever you want to call it, of a sports psychologist. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Darius. It kind of just dives into a bunch of different things. But you can see this here, Andy Strickland and Craig Berube's approach to player development. He'll be upfront. He'll be honest. It's up to the player if they're willing to make that adjustment for the better of the team. Basically, you can go into here. Turnovers, poor puck management. That did not fly under Craig Berube in St. Louis. Losing the puck was one thing, but Berube expected increased effort when trying to win it back, something we saw a lot last year that wasn't happening. And he said the players in St. Louis quickly realized why Berube was demanding increased intensity midway through the season. He didn't believe in flipping the switch, as it were, and asking his team to start playoff-style hockey after the regular season, which is something we've seen now a bunch with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're always a great regular season team, and they can never flip the switch, winning only one playoff round since 2018. So it's getting me excited almost reading this, and I just want to get your thoughts on this part of it. It seems like he really wants the switch to be flipped in October when the season starts.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that because, like you mentioned at the start of the video too, this year feels different in the way that, like, I'm not just waiting for the playoffs to start, right? The last couple of years, maybe even the last 4 or 5 years, just take me to the playoffs, right? That's all I care about. I know what the team can do in the regular season, but again, they don't really switch the way they play. And I see some similarities to the Washington Capitals in 2017, 2018, where, Barry Trotz came in and basically said, "Okay, you guys have been a great regular season team for like 10 years now, right? But what's the ultimate goal? Do you want to win the Stanley Cup?" And obviously the answer is yes. And he said, "Okay, then you have to change the way you play." And they did, and they won the Stanley Cup, right? So I see some similarities in that way. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but I can see, Craig Berube being able to come in and be like, listen, if you want to win Stanley Cup, if that's the goal, you got to do these things differently. You have to change the way you play. And I think if the Leafs are able to do that, because a lot of it is mental on the mental side, I think right now we know the skill is there. If they're able to do that and make that switch, then I can see them finally going further because it's a different voice. And, hopefully they'll, the old saying, run through a wall for their coach or anything like that. Right. So I'm excited for this season to see if that switch gets flipped. Right. We still have to see that. So it's going to be exciting.
We've been talking the whole offseason about how we hope that the only move they make isn't just changing the coaching staff. But I think at this point, we're going to have to live with the fact that Mitch Marner is probably going to stay at Toronto Maple Leaf. Nick Robertson, we don't know about that yet. But I think that the personnel they brought in kind of complements what he's going to do. I mean, you think about Chris Tanev, OEL a bit less, but maybe you can think that Craig Berube can unlock something in OEL that we haven't seen before. And diving deeper into the sports psychology article, what didn't fly was not engaging physically in some manner. Speaking of OEL, Berube stressed how the physical engagement could continually influence the game. You can't play your game without getting your jersey dirty. That was something he believed. And really the polar opposite of what the Leafs, in theory, were kind of doing last year. They did bring in some physical guys. You obviously think about Lyubushkin, Joel Edmondson to a degree, and they brought in theory, Yanni Hakanpää this offseason, even though there's some updates on that front. Probably a video for you guys coming out soon regarding that. But basically, you read through all of this, and basically what you can see is that he's not going to tolerate a lack of effort or a lack of physicality, and that's something, well, from top to bottom, they're not going to do that. And the Leafs have a lot of star power that some Leafs fans out there would say aren't tough enough, aren't specifically Mitch Marner people usually go for. I'm not necessarily going to come out and say that I don't think Mitch Marner is tough enough or anything like that. I just think that he has another level to his game that he can unlock, not just Mitch Marner, but everybody else in the on the team here. And I think Berube can unlock a lot of these guys. Even though Mitch Marner is a great player, 100-point per game player, every single player on the Leafs can benefit. Even Austin Matthews, top to bottom, from Craig Berube, if they buy in, which is, like they said here, is the hardest part kind of for every single player, especially with the new coach. But I think the Leafs are ready to do it because, quite frankly, I'm sure the core four wants success more than any of us.
Yeah, and like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, like they keep changing everything around the edges. They bring in tougher guys, right? But I think, like everyone knows, it falls on the court, right? Your core players have to play a certain way. So if Craig Berube can get them to do that, then I think that is the recipe for success. Because at the end of the day, if the core doesn't change the way they play, it doesn't matter who you add around them. So that's the key for the Leafs, I think, heading into this season, if Craig Berube can change that mentality for them. Because in years past, if you see Leafs teams that succeeded in the past, all their best players were their toughest players and throwing hits and stuff like that. And I don't see that at times from the Leafs. I don't see them being the aggressor in most series, right? You kind of have to go out and get it, right? If you look at the Bruins this year, they were kind of initiating everything, right? And they always have against the Leafs. And I think that is an issue. So I'm not saying that they have to go out of their way to be, tougher and play dirty or anything like that. But sometimes be the aggressor and start throwing your body around and make things happen for yourself. Because sometimes watching the team, they don't do that. They kind of just go with the status quo and their game plan, and hasn't really worked for them. So hopefully Craig Berube can kind of instill that change mentally. I think more so than anything, it's a mental change that he's going to bring to this team, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be able to do that. And the season's inching closer and closer. I see some of the comments. People are starting to get excited. We are too. And hopefully some exciting things continue to happen this offseason. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on that season.